Hey everyone, how's it going today? I'm here with the excellent man and person and friend and guitar player David Grissom. And I'm in New York and he is down in Austin. And we're going to do everything we can today to, this is the audio that we live with. And thanks so much for being here, everyone. So hey David, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. It's a little on the early side for me down here in Austin, but
Sure.
I find that time has taken on a new relationship to everything.
Right, like it comes down to days now, doesn't it? Like
If it's 3 in the morning or 7 in the morning
yeah,
anymore.
right. And it's just a day. Like today's a day. You know what I
Hey,
mean? Yeah. So, um,
I dreamed last night that I was supposed to get up this morning and do this.
oh really?
This is like, normally you're like, in the dream you've missed the day,
Hmm.
but today I was like, I need to get up and do this today.
Yeah,
Fun.
that's pretty fun. So thanks so much for being here. And so the first thing I want to start off by saying you, and I will play some in a little bit. Let me put some of that on. You've got a new CD that you're putting out.
I do.
It's out for pre-order, right?
Yeah.
All right.
It comes out May 1st, and it is on Bandcamp right now, where you can pre-order it, and you get a track. This is the way they do it now. It was supposed to be on iTunes, but I didn't press the right button, or it's in the iTunes review
Right.
process, maybe.
Play a little in the background for you here. So there's a link, guys, in the description. You can get it. You can pre-order it now. So that would be super cool if you guys did that. All right, so what we're going to do today is you're going to give, you're going to play a little bit. And if you guys, you can see there's a link in the PDF to a PDF and a background track that David has provided for us. And David's going to play a little bit. You're actually going to play that song Squawk and jam on that one, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to play the solo section from the tune. That was what that's the song you were just playing, which is new record is a live record, and that track is on it. That song is on it. So I'm just going to play through the solo section, and I put the track that I'm playing to in the Dropbox in a PDF. That's not a chart for the song. It's just some stuff I'll talk about
Cool.
a little later, and I'm going to explore. When I play over this, I may exaggerate some of these concepts I want to talk about, and not going for the perfect solo. So that's what's in the Dropbox, and I'll
Cool.
kind of just hammer away, and we'll ask for everyone's understanding for the Skype video audio situation.
Right. And it being 10 a.m. in the morning. Too early for guitar. Yeah.
Anyway, in the old days that would have been undoable.
Everything's different now. All right, you want to take it away? I'm going to shut
right.
up now and let you play.
Let me see if I can got the technology correct here. 12-bar blues. Basically, if you're counting slow bars, 24 bars if you're counting fast, but I'm just counting 1, 2, 3, 4. The only difference between the way you would normally think of a 12-bar blues or the typical 12-bar blues is on the turnaround. Most people and most typical 12-bar blues would just be the 5/4, the E7. So on this tune, the turnaround is a bar of E, and then a split bar of D over F sharp and G. So it makes it a little meaner sounding. It's just kind of a little variation on the way to get back to the 1 chord. So I kind of tried to throw in a bunch of different concepts there in that solo. And one of the things that I've come to think about over the years is to rethink the blues scale, if you will, a little bit. And when I was starting out playing, the first scale I learned was the blues scale, which is basically the minor pentatonic with the flat 5 thrown in. And then I got into the Allman Brothers, and I got the Dickie Betts major pentatonic. So between those two things, I could kind of cover a lot of, with my limited knowledge, a lot of different blues vibes. As quite a few years have gone by, I feel like to think about just the blues scale is really limiting, because the blues scale doesn't have the 9. And again, I'm in A. It doesn't have the 9 or the 6. So if you don't play if you're just playing a straight blues scale, see, I can't even play a straight blues scale. You sort of take yourself out of the ability to enter Albert Collins land or B.B. King land, because both those guys were constantly they would play the 9th or the 2nd, the 2 and the flat 3. So the scale that I think of most often is I call it the Dorian add 3, add the major 3, or you can think of it as the Mixolydian add the flat 3 in. I don't really think about it that much, but that's sort of where I land, and that's subconsciously is where I'm coming from. So this particular tune, I would say I'm not playing voicings like this. You could play 9th chords, but I'm playing more just straight an A without a third on the 1 chord, on the A. I'm not really adding a third in, which allows me, when I'm soloing, to play both the flat 3 and the major 3, which is all over the A. So in effect, when you do that, when you eliminate the third from the chord, it also functions as a 7 plus 9, which has a major third and a minor third, the Hendrix chord. This formation, this is what most of us know from Foxy Lady. So if I'm comping, I'm generally start out my rhythm playing just not playing the third. So it just gives me a lot of flexibility. To me, it sounds a little meaner. It's not a typical 12-bar Sonny Boy Williamson, B.B. King approach to playing a blues, and it's kind of become, could talk all day long about the chord voicings that I use that don't have thirds in them. But from a soloing standpoint, this particular scale, if you think of a Dorian scale, which is a G major scale in A Dorian. Same thing as a G major scale. So Dorian, if you think of that, and then think about also including the major third, the difference between a Dorian and Mixolydian is just the flat 3 and the major 3. So just combine the two scales and you end up with so you just can toggle back and forth between the major third and the flat 3. It dawned on me that if you take the major pentatonic scale and overlay it on the minor pentatonic scale, if you literally if you wrote out both scales, it's the same. That is exactly the scale that you arrive at. The Dorian add major 3, or the Mixolydian add the flat 3. It's the same thing. So in effect, I've got the notes of all the pentatonic scale notes, and that doesn't make me have to play that way all the time. It doesn't mean I can't break out a major pentatonic pattern to emphasize a tonality at any time. But I get people asking me a lot, what scale do you use and what are your approaches to scales? And I think we can get really caught up in modes, especially if for beginning intermediate players, it's really daunting. And for me, it's daunting to think about every mode of the major scale and knowing what it's called and start being able to play that. I just relate it to the major scale. And for me, learning the fingerings of the major scale up and down the neck, starting on the 6th string, starting on the 5th string, to be able to connect those fingerings up and down the neck helps me develop muscle memory. And then I can transfer it to Dorian and Mixolydian, which are the two major modes that we use in blues rock, whatever you want to call it, even country Americana, those modes. Having said that, I took, in several instances in that little snippet there, I was playing that idea of playing those scales I was just talking about, that scale, and interspersing chromatic notes with it. And it really adds a lot of interest. It's kind of allows, I think of it more of the ability to, I don't know if jazz is the right word, but it adds just a completely different component to it. So the general approach to that, in very simple terms, is if there's a whole step interval in this scale, the note in between that, the half step in between, is fair game. And generally, I think of it in terms of passing tones. So what I'm referring to in the scale, so I've got right there, but those little kinds of movement. So you can really combine those chromatics with the scale. And again, there's a chromatic, which effectively you're playing a harmonic minor. But don't think too much about that right now. The key thing is to maybe think about, if you're not doing that already, is to introduce chromatics into that typical blues scale, Dorian, Mixolydian zone that we get into a lot in this particular type of tune. Jeff, do you want me to just keep talking? you want to interject at all? I can keep.
You're doing great, and everybody's kind of commenting.
I can talk you into tomorrow if you want.
No, it's great. This is fantastic. I know there's a little audio video delay with your people are commenting. I'm new to all this, so I'm working on it. You know, I'm handling it. Your audio is a little bit off with your mouth, but you guys just kind of have to deal with it for now because it's all new to me. It's nothing to do with you, David. It has nothing to do with you. I know what to do on my end, but I don't know if I want to risk it live. That's all. So doing what we can. So it's all new to me. So just the information is there, and the sound is great. So keep going. I think you're doing a killer job.
Okay. So I would just say that people have questions.
I've got them here.
Feel free to ask anything you want.
So what I figured we'd do,
I'm going to kind of burn through this a little bit.
Great.
It's concepts. So that's kind of that is the basic premise for how I'm soloing here. And another way to simplify the way you think about this sort of getting out of the blues rut, that basically is what I'm talking about, is to just think about, in general, when you're on the one chord, you really can go back and forth between the major third in this type of tune. And even in rhythm playing, I will sometimes make it a major tonality and over that one chord, or after the turnaround coming back to it, and sometimes I'll make it a minor tonality. So instead of playing a full-on 7 sharp 9, I'll just play the A minor 7 triads. And then when I get to the 4 chord, the D7, and these are all basically 7th chords. The key thing to remember there is to just be careful with the major third and then dig into the flat 3. But see there, I used it as the major third as a passing tone. But in general, if you just think of the 1 chord emphasizing the major third, the 4 chord emphasizing the flat 3, you'll go a long way. You don't have to think about necessarily 3 different scales for the 1, 4, and the 5. And then when I get to the 5 chord, sort of the key note there is to introduce or feature the G sharp, which is the natural 7. So the whole time in Mixolydian or Dorian, we're kind of hammering on the flat 7. And when it gets to the 5, that G sharp, if you can sort of hit that, or you can, a lot of times I bend into it, and in this tune, then I hit the D over F sharp, G, I'm not going to want to play the G sharp over those chords. I'm back to the old scale. So it's a kind of a quick visit to the G sharp world. So that's kind of the scale route through that tune. And then there's a PDF in the Dropbox that basically is entitled A Mixolydian Triads. And so a lot of one of the techniques that I use a lot, and I kind of got it from when I was in high school. I got a Crusaders record called Chain Reaction, and the feel, the touch, everything about it made a big impression on me. And it's so funny because I don't know how I happened on a Crusaders record in Louisville, Kentucky growing up, but I did. And I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but it sort of started to creep into my playing more and more. And that is superimposing triads that aren't an A triad over. In this situation, I'm superimposing some different triads over A. And in a blues situation, what I have written down here, the triads that I'm superimposing are of course, the A, the 1 chord, the D, which is the 4 chord, and the G, which is the flat 7. So if you think about in both Mixolydian and Dorian, we have, those are kind of the key, the 1, flat 7, 4. So where we can play those triads over just a static A vamp. So what I've written out for you, if you read the top row left to right and then to the bottom row left to right, is just A, D, G, A, D, A, D, G, A, D, G. So So you can just use that and once you get further along in it, it provides all sorts of interesting ways to get out of just playing the scales. So like an A triad here, G triad, D triad. You don't have to start on A. D triad to a G triad. So there's just all kinds of cool ways of connecting these triads. So just the 1, the flat 7, and the 4. And again, I'm talking about degrees of the major scale. So if you're not familiar with that, it's a quick study. It's just the major scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. You can find that information anywhere. So let's see my train of thought. So a lot of times you can do these on any combination of chords, of strings, excuse me. So on the top 3, the middle 3. You can do it lower, But I find it to be more useful and in general on the higher strings it gets kind of muddy unless you really get the right tone dialed in, and that's a little more for another day. So let me just show you a really kind of a way to incorporate this that I do all the time. And so again, over A, I'll play a G, and the fingering that I'm doing on this, it's a hybrid picking thing where the first 2 notes are picked with a downstroke with the pick, and the last note is picked with an upstroke with my middle finger. So it's, is that visible?
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
So it might be cool to practice, if you practice just up in these triads, up and down with that fingering. If that's not a fingering you're not used to using, I find it to be really, the fingerings, both in chords and in some of these licks, really have a lot to do with the way they sound. Because I can. So the fingerings are really important, and also that might be a good exercise to sort of get started on hybrid picking if you're not doing that already. And if you're not doing hybrid picking, without giving a sermon, it's not Sunday yet, I would suggest that that's something that you're just like, the 2 things that I always mention are using the thumb to fret notes and to mute, and then to hybrid pick. There's just 1,000 things that I could not do, would not be able to even play my style without those 2 things. So back to the G triad. So the pattern of the lick, let me show you the whole thing first. And I mean, that's a real Larry Carlton-ish thing. And so breaking it down. So the same thing, down, down, up. Using the pick to strike the E, and then just slide up to the F sharp, and then upstroke on the A. Or you can hit a downstroke with your pick. And I usually lead into that with so when I do it that way, I'm just E, F sharp, sliding into the G. I'm not striking that G when I play this lick. So that's using the G triad. You can do the exact same lick further up the neck using the D triad, because again, remember, we can use the flat 7 and the 4 triads to create interest over just this one chord. So this here it is down here. Here it is down up here. So I'm starting on B, C sharp, D to my triad, sliding into the C sharp to the E. So it's a very major tonality when I'm doing that, but you can also get the flat 3 in there. And again, on that flat 3, you can bend it up about just shy of the major third, which is the way the melody of the song is. So I couldn't play this song if I wasn't fretting with my thumb and using my middle finger above it to play the melody above. It just wouldn't sound the same to go. All the attitude comes from the leverage and the ability to mute and so I digress a little bit. So the superimposing the triads over the one chord there is a really cool thing. You can do the same thing on the 4 chord, the D7. And on the D7, you would just trade out. You wouldn't want to play the 1 triad in general. The A, you wouldn't want to play. It's kind of a weird sound to play. So over the 4 chord, I obviously can play the 4, and I can play the flat 7 and then the flat 3. Let's see. So that lick that I showed you, when I hit the 4, I would do that same lick, emphasis on the flat 3. So back to the 1. When I hit the 5, I can play the E, the D, and the A. So 5, 4, I use these things all the time. I can play the flat 7. Back to the 1. And the other thing, so I'm going to try to cram as much stuff as I can into this. Okay. The one other thing I want to mention is that I was using a lot of open strings, and the beauty of the guitar is that with all these open strings, guitar is one of the hardest instruments to read on because all the notes, several notes repeat 4 or 5 times all the way up and down the fingerboard. But the open strings give us the ability to do all sorts of interesting things you couldn't do as easily on a piano. And so a big part of my whole technique and approach and style has become incorporating open strings into soloing and chords both. So, my whole chord, I never miss a chance to use an open string on a chord. And so in the solo, I was using, and if you think about a Mixolydian or a Dorian, either one, you have every string on, all those notes are within the scale. Or if you think about the A major minor pentatonic, either the major or the minor pentatonic scale, these are all legal notes. So all down here, normally when you think of using open strings in your soloing, we all do the E thing. So this is in A. First position again. But it just dawned on me a couple of years ago that if those notes were good when I was playing down here, they're also good further up the neck. So you can get some really interesting sounds by incorporating those strings when you're playing up higher on the neck. So let me just go up 5 frets further. And up all the way up to the 12th fret. And you can even drone with if you keep the open G. A lot of times this is the obvious thing, leaving the open E, but you can leave the open G as well as a drone, the flat 7. So, open strings, I would, you might want to investigate that in both your rhythm playing and your soloing, and that's a whole nother world that we could spend talking about.
Right. Well, man.
So that's kind of what I really wanted to go over. Just some different approaches to thinking about soloing on a blues.
Thanks, Killer. Sorry about some of the audio stuff. I'm working on it here, but you guys got the idea. So, hold on. This is crazy. We got a little bit of off on the audio, which okay, we're just gonna deal with it for today. But
we have to do it all over again.
We'll do it all over again. No, but super cool information, man. It's so funny. We did a test run last night. None of this was going on, so. Who knows? I'm a guitar player, not an AV guy. So as of today, I'm an AV guy. All right, so killer questions from everybody. So let me read a few out, and let me go through. And I'm going to close my window while I squint. Hold on. And read these.
I thought about wearing a hat to be in solidarity with you.
Oh, yeah, man. Cool. Well, you got all the hair. You don't need to wear a hat.
Well, I'm sharpening up the kitchen shears.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to cut some hair at some point.
I spent for, the $50 with Amazon for the Clippers. It was the best $50 ever spent, All right, so Roman Legions wants to know some of your influences, both early and later.
Early, like the first record I ever bought was Revolver by the Beatles, and that at the time I was playing drums, and then I switched over to guitar because of that record. The tones, the whole, I think it was "Got to Get You Into My Life," the lick that, I don't know if it's George playing when he does the horn line. The tremolo needs to be faster, but so that hearing Revolver really just was like, I don't know, there was something about it that got me off the drums onto guitar, and I kind of traced my influences by the guitar teachers that I had. There's a guy in my neighborhood that I think the first song he taught me to play was "Sympathy for the Devil." I got "Get Your Yayas Out," so I learned the live version of "Get Your Yayas Out," and then I got Hendrix in the West, and I really got totally immersed in that. And then I got that guitar teacher said, you need to go with a different guitar teacher because you're getting better, and this will help you progress if you go study with my friend Philip. And in the first lesson, we did some playing together, and he was more of a blues guy, and he said, get these 3 records, and it was B.B. King Live at the Regal, Magic Sam West Side Soul, and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band's first record, which I did get and did study. So those 3 records were really pivotal. My dad played lots of country music around the house, and there was a Waylon Jennings song called "Only Daddy That'll Walk the Line," where there's this unbelievable kind of chicken picking pedal steel thing that Wayne Moss played. That was a huge influence on me. I saw that Roy Buchanan PBS special, the best guitarist you've never heard, or whatever it was, World's Greatest Unknown Guitarist. And
I remember that. Yeah, it's amazing.
That was a huge influence. And then my next teacher was a jazz guy, and I started to learn more about harmony, and he kind of eased me into it, with Kenny Burrell, the more blues-based guys, and then Wes, and each week we would learn a standard that I would play over, and I learned to read just enough to get into trouble, but also, even in Nashville, when we're writing number charts, or there are rhythms written in, and you need to know repeat signs and DSs and codas and all that. So I got a fair amount of theory there, but Wes was a huge influence. And then I got the Pat Metheny Bright Side's Life. And so not only Pat Metheny, but Jocko, his phrasing and everything, those were big influences on me. And in the meantime, through all that, in Louisville, all the Southern rock bands would come through. And so I saw the Allman Brothers and ZZ Top and Leonard Skinner and Marshall Tucker and all those guys. And I was really into the Allman Brothers.
Yeah. Well, you played with them too, right?
I did. I was an Allman Brother for 3 weeks in 1993.
Can you tell the story about that? You told me how you got the call for that, which is, I think, just the coolest story in the world.
Yeah, I was on the way home. I'd done some gigs with John Mellencamp, and it wasn't a full tour at that time. They'd had a big flood in the Midwest. And so Mellencamp and Dylan joined up together to do some flood relief shows. And I was flying home to Austin. I was in O'Hare Airport, and this would have been 92-ish. I know it was 93. Before everybody had a cell phone, and I got on a payphone and called my wife just to check in, and she said the Allman Brothers called. They want to know if you can. Dickie has got to go someplace for a few weeks and want to know if you could fill in. And I'm like, yeah, I can fill in. And she said, well, here's the manager's number. Call him. And when I called him and got an answering machine, left a message, and he called me back while I was flying from O'Hare to Austin. I landed and got the message, and it said, God, I'm sorry, we got somebody else. and I was crushed. And the next day, I was in a music store in Austin, just hanging out, which is what I did a lot back then in Austin, just hang out at the music store. And I got paged in the music store, and I'm like, who gets paged in a music store? I went, and it was Shelley again, and she said, the Allman Brothers called back. The guy didn't work out. They want to know if you can come out tonight, get on a plane tonight. And I said, well, yeah. And she says, it leaves in 2 hours. And so I, raced home, got my guitar, I packed up a PRS and a Fender reverb unit, and made the flight, and I sat on the curb at, I think it was Dulles, or I don't know which Washington airport it was, sitting on the curb with my anvil cases and a suitcase, and the tour bus pulls up, and it's midnight, and I get on the bus, and Greg's right there, and he goes, hey man, how you doing? And I'm just like thinking, this is, when I was in high school, I played in a band. We had 2 drummers, and we would jam all the time, and it would be Allman Brothers tunes half the time. And so we go to a hotel, go to sleep. I get up the next day, and we have a 45-minute rehearsal sound check at Merriweather Post Pavilion, which holds it's an outdoor amphitheater, holds about 20,000, 25,000 people. And 45 minutes, that was the last time we ever rehearsed or did a sound check for 3 weeks, and went out and played the show that night. And I just knew most of the songs already, and I remembered them. They were so ingrained in my psyche, and it was a top 5. If I had to list all the things I've been fortunate enough to be a part of, that would be at the very top of the list. It was really, really, really fun.
Yeah, I would say, and a little nerve-wracking. I can imagine.
It was, but I don't know, man. I just, for some reason, at that point in my life, I had a lot of confidence.
No, you're ready for it.
I could pull it off, and everybody was so cool. And it was also the Mellencamp situation that I had been in for 3 years was, very, very regimented and military, and like, if you make a mistake, you're dead kind of vibe.
Wow.
And this was like, 5 minutes before the show was supposed to start, the road manager would come around and say, yeah, we're about ready. Everybody kind of get, let's go side of the stage, and just be hanging on the side of the stage. And the tour manager would come out and introduce the band. We amble out, check our tuning, and start playing. And
like a bar gig, like a bar gig, right?
Like a bar gig, but it was just, it was just about the music, nothing else.
That's amazing.
And, I knew that it was like you could take long solos, and I did take long solos, and it's like the first night after Elizabeth Reed or Whipping Post or Dreams, finish a 3 or 4 minute solo, and 20,000 people erupt like it'd be like it's a jazz club. They were listening to the solos intently. And after the first night, Warren's like, Dave, can you play longer solos? No one has ever said that to me, ever. Or, no, the 2 things that people never said to me before that were, can you play louder, and can you play long solos?
Yeah.
And
perfect gig.
So that was really awesome.
And then playing the music that you've grown up listening to. How cool is that,
Yeah, it was surreal. I can't even begin to tell you. Standing between Greg and Warren, and then feeling Butch and J-Mo behind me, that freight train of a rhythm section.
Yeah.
It was beyond. I couldn't make it up.
Yeah.
And literally, when you're young, you have these fantasies. I don't know if everybody does it, but I fantasized.
Sure.
When I was 15 years old, of being able to play with the people that my heroes, and they were one of them. So here I am doing it, and it was
surreal.
It was just the only terrible part about it that it ended.
Right.
Everything about it was the coolest thing, and so it really kind of shifted my focus back to this just being about music. The experience of playing with John, and especially John's band, that was just an incredible group of musicians that form when, as the whole was this
The unit.
amazing unit. There were so many great experiences about working in that situation, but it kind of, the Allman Brothers thing brought me back to what really mattered and what I knew I wanted to focus on from that point on was just, let's just keep it about music.
That's amazing. That's a great story. So I want to talk about real quickly how just we met, because people, how'd you guys meet? I don't know if I've told you this story before, you don't remember. It was the National Guitar Workshop. I didn't know who you were at the time. It was many years ago. And it was like this guy, and then we had this in the afternoon, there was a sound check, and you were playing, and I was like, what is that? Just the guitar sound, I'm sitting there like a lot of at the point in time, I got suckered into that rack mount units and, MIDI setups and all this stuff. And then I heard you, and I walked in, I was like, what is going on in there? That's amazing. And you had borrowed an amp, whatever the amp was there.
It was a PV.
It was a PV. Yeah, it was terrible. And then
it was a PV. I remember specifically. It was a 410 PV.
Yeah, I remember, right. And you had a boost. You had was a TC boost. And I'm just thinking, and you played a few chords, and I was like, I have it all wrong. And I'm looking at you had one pedal on the floor, and that was like a real pivotal moment for me, which I got to thank you for, years later, was that kind of thing of going like, none of this other stuff matters. It's just a good amp in your hands. You know what I mean? And not even a good amp, because you still sound exactly. And the funny thing is, when you came up to New York to play that gig at National Sawdust that I was curating, and we played all together, you used one of my amps, and you sound exactly like yourself, which was really kind of a cool thing, to hear that. And then it was just as a personal anecdote for people who want to know. Sometimes how do you guys know each other? That was when we met, and it was a big, like I said, a pivotal moment for me. And then I got live at Liberty Lunch. I think it was Matt Smith who said, "Oh, you got to get this record, buddy." So I went out and got that, and it was like, wow, everything was, was changed a lot, and the whole rhythm style of it playing, and it is funny. I think we talked about this. I heard something on like Outlaw Country on Sirius. I think I gave you a call. I was like, are you on that? And you're like, no, I don't think so. And what always strikes me is how you've influenced that whole genre as guitar players. I was watching somebody posted something on YouTube about some singer in Nashville, and a guitar player was playing, and I was like, it sounded like you, which I think was like, which is such an amazing thing. How
do I feel about when I hear other people sort of copying my thing a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an honor. I don't.
Cool.
I mean, inevitably, I did it. We all do. We all
Sure.
have people that we emulate to sort of get going. I feel fine with it, and that's my whole, at this point in my life, why I'm sitting here today and why I've done True Fire videos, and it gives me great pleasure to share what I've learned over the years and hopefully inspire someone else to get deeper into playing music and get more joy out of it, because God knows we need, it's a very spiritual path for me, playing. And I can tell you that this is the longest I've ever gone without playing with other people.
Right.
And playing live.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that, like 15, 20 years?
Wow.
Since I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
Just whenever you were paying attention.
I was. I'm just not on camera. Okay. Now I'm smiling. Yeah, I'm laughing because I was off camera, but I'm smiling. Yes.
Anyway, to me, to be able to share what because I had so many people that were generous with me. Pat Metheny was unbelievably gracious, giving me advice, and his advice was play gigs and play melody. But so if I hear somebody doing something that sounds like me, I do have that experience on the radio. Occasionally, I'll listen to certain stations, and I'm like, is that me? And sometimes it is me, and I forgot that I did the session. Somebody posted something the other day of a John Prine song, and the guy in Austin. He goes, "This is our guy, our local guy, David, played on this," and I don't remember doing it.
Well, I think
and
one time
you do enough sessions, and they can kind of blur together.
There's a great solo on Pocatello from one of the James McMurtry records. And you don't remember, I called you up, I'm like, dude, this is like the greatest solo, one of your best solos in my mind. Like, I just love that solo, love the tune, love his music and everything too. So, you got the joy of playing on some great music. And you're like, was that? I don't remember that. I just thought it was the funniest thing. I'm like, this is a brilliant solo, and you had no recollection of it whatsoever.
I had to go listen to it, and I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, which is so awesome. I think it's great that when I hear people, doing your thing, that's doing your thing in the sense of that it's influential. I didn't mean any negative implication, like how do you feel about that? I meant that must feel pretty cool when you hear somebody doing, how could it not, Yeah.
It does. And inevitably, with each generation, there's younger musicians come along and they take what you've done and they make it better and expand upon it. And it's really cool to sort of see that happen as well. There's so many great young guitar players out there, younger than me.
Right. Is that, like 15, right? You mean 15-year-olds?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a few questions over here. Let me lean over here and look at this. Andy Aladort's chiming in. Andy, what's up?
Hi.
Got people all over the place. Great stuff. James Hogan, Marco.
Hey, James.
All right. Okay, let me get a few questions. One thing I do want to say while we're on the whole other thing, that David there's a link in the bio or in my section here, and Phil has been posting it for a few things. One, we have a tip jar, which I really appreciate to give money to everybody here. So just to help out in these times. If you want a tip, we appreciate it. If not, I understand as well. We're all in tight times, so just any money that I get here, I've just turned back into the channel. We're going to see a big upgrade and a bunch of things. I always give the money to the artist who's on the channel with me for the interviews too. So just want to pass that out so everybody knows. And you have a new CD out, and we'll get to that more in detail in a second. And then you have a Open Roads 25, where your True Fire course is on sale for 25% off. If you go to David's website, or if you go to True Fire, go to David's website, you can get it through there. And if you enter that code, you get 25% off for a week on both of David's courses. So I highly recommend them. And like you said, what I loved about the courses, and that's one of the ways we met, like I helped bring you into True Fire, to get you to do that stuff. You lay it all out. Like you said, you're not holding anything back. If you really want to dig into in detail what you're doing, those two courses are like, here's everything I'm doing.
Yeah.
Here it is.
I really tried. I mean, I didn't hold anything back at all.
Not at all.
I did best to articulate things and break them down. The first one's like 220 minutes long. I don't know, So
yeah, it was long. It was great though.
It's long.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the new CD for a minute while I get some of the questions. So, can you talk about this is just, you did record it all at the Saxon Pub, and talk about you've got a regular gig there, right?
Yeah, I've been doing a residency there for about 8 years.
Wow.
And here it is.
Woohoo!
The question is, how am I going to sell physical copies now? I don't know. But the downloads at Bandcamp are, CD quality or better. You can download.
Yeah, FLAC. Yeah.
As files.
Sorry. There we go. We'll volume that up. There we go. There you go. Just playing a little bit. This is Squawk from there again. All right. I'm trying to be a good host here.
Yeah, it's seamless, man. It's like Howard's there. So I recorded several nights at the residency, and I only recorded nights I was playing as a trio. And I had lots of stuff to choose from. We never did a sound check or a line check, and it was recorded straight off the digital board onto a little $10 thumb drive. But I basically wanted to capture the nights, the performances where we were really, really, as Dwayne would say, hitting the note. And there are 8 songs, and it's 52 minutes long. So one of the songs is over 9 minutes. And it's really a departure from my last CDs that are very... I did put a few live tracks on my last CD, but I think this is definitely shows a lot of growth in my playing and the band as a whole. And I really wanted to get performances and choose the cuts, the actual ones that went on the record that went someplace. And you can feel that when
there's some really great moments
when everybody's hitting on all cylinders, and as a unit you go someplace you've never been. And I could pull up 4 versions of Crosscut Solo, and they're all completely different.
Yeah.
So I mixed it, and it was a lot of work to mix to get it to sound the way I wanted it to sound. But they do have room mics in the Saxon, and I really used a lot of that. So to get the real feeling like you're in the room, it's a very small stage. I love playing there. It's my favorite place to play. Mm-hmm. But it's a very small stage. And we play loud. Everything bleeds into everything else. So if you listen to the vocal mic, it was the whole band. And 5 of the tracks were from one night. All the tracks that Chris Marish is on, the bass player, Chris Marish, were from one night. And on that night, somehow all the drums, the entire kit got bussed into the snare mic.
Wow.
So that's what I was dealing with. But
well,
I'm really happy with the way it sounds. And it took a lot of time and effort and advice from other people. But I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm excited about it. And not being able to play my gigs right now, which is very foreign to me, it seemed like a great record to go ahead and put out. And
I got a advanced copy of the tracks, and I've listened to it a number of times. And I agree with what you're saying. There's a bunch of times where you take it out too in ways that I've not really heard you do. It felt like, but everybody was with you. I noticed that right away. You know what I mean? That like this is the band that's been playing together for a while too. Like you got that trust musical thing going on where it sounded like there was just some great, I don't want to say jazz moments, but free improvisational moments where you guys were just taking it somewhere. And places where I haven't necessarily heard, maybe because those are things you do live. You just kind of just let it rip like that. You start kind of taking it to a bit more of your jazzier elements come out at times too, which you don't maybe hear as much from you on some records. So I really dug it because I know how much you like jazz and all that. Then so some really cool experimental sounding stuff, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I do think that's a little bit of a touchy realm for me, because I don't want it to be like, I never wanted to veer into, although I loved listening to Weather Report and Return to Forever when I was in high school. I don't want it to be a fusion thing. I always try to keep the grittiness, the blues-based element to it, even when we're taking it out. So, there are a couple times where it definitely gets out there, but I'm cool with it.
Great. I think it's killer, man. Andy Alador was asking, can you say something about the natural development of a melodic line in improvised solo?
Sure.
Okay.
Andy's trying to bust my chops.
Is he? Okay. Well.
No, actually, Andy, by the way, if you don't know Andy Alador, he's a phenomenal guitar player. And
sure.
I think he's the only, Carter Arrington, unbelievable player, will play my band on occasion when he's in town. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, Andy and Josh Smith are the only 2 people that have ever done sat in with our band, just because sitting in it becomes weird.
Sure.
On a super small stage like that. But my sort of approach to developing a melodic, what was the question exactly? A melodic line or a melodic theme?
Yeah.
I mean, I try to make solos like a conversation, and you generally might start with a motif, whether it's let me start by saying that one of the things that I've cultivated over the years, and that is just like muscle memory and getting your chops together physically, is the ability to turn off my preconceived notions of what I'm going to play in a solo, starting it with an empty canvas, and to clear my mind out, to allow something different to happen. And I'd rather fall on my face trying to go someplace different than just spew out 3 minutes of things that I've practiced at home. So that's, just not playing out live and everything. That part of my brain is not being used as much. But in general, on soloing, I'll start with some kind of motif or some sort of, whether it's like it can be totally an inside thing, Turn my tremolo off. Dwayne Allman was the master of building solos like that. It can be a totally inside thing, or I might just, I might start on like a note that you wouldn't normally expect. Repeat it. But this is the sort of the anchor point. This 2 or this 9, the 9 in that situation. I might start off the solo with just an A and let that ring for a while, just to sort of let things settle and get your attention. So like if you have a conversation and there's a bunch of people talking in the room, which is quite often the case in a nightclub or a concert, wait, what just happened over there? And everybody focuses. And once you get them, then you can start. It's sort of like, hey, how you doing? What's been going on? I kind of have this thing I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And maybe get your opinion on it. And because I have a feeling you're not necessarily in agreement, and I'm going to try to coax you in through this thing that I play. And so that's kind of esoteric. And again, it's a subconscious thing, but in a conversation with somebody, you are able to engage and have a more meaningful conversation if you don't spew everything out at once. So I try to take my time and leave space. Again, the space, the Miles quote is, play what you don't know, or play where there aren't any notes, or whatever. I don't know how he said it, but what you don't say is as important as what you do say.
Right. Well, the old apocryphal thing was, Miles said to Coltrane, how do you play like that? No, Coltrane said to Miles, how do you play like that? And Miles said, why don't you try taking the horn out of your mouth?
Yeah.
Which, not to knock Coltrane, but it's an interesting thing. Like it's the creating space and being able to tell a story. And I like this when you're talking about this sort of esoteric stuff, because I think a lot of people think, when people teaching, are you thinking about notes or scales? I'm like, no. I'm just thinking about music, and trying to create something. And even people say, mistakes. We make jokes about this, like you say, you make mistakes all the time. And it's because you're when we say mistakes, you might have been sloppy, or I've been sloppy, but it's hopefully in the context of trying to create something. So who cares? It's about this moment in time that you're bringing people with you. It's not about, it's about a living, breathing thing that is going on just then, and that's all that matters. That's my thought.
Well, and I think that I know I agree with you. It is an organic thing, and I try to read the room when I come in. By that I mean, what does it feel like in here tonight? What do people need? What's the energy? Where does it want to go? If I'm the more tired, or the more my brain is trying to convince me I'm not going to play that well that night, the more aggressive I tend to come out of the gate. I'm just a fighter like that. I don't ever want to phone it in.
No. No.
I had a brilliant thing I was going to add to the whole
as usual
development. Making mistakes you were talking about.
Right.
It is a bummer when you're backing somebody up, and it's a 3-piece band, and you're really hammering out big chords, and on the 4 chord, you're a half step off. I mean, that's no fun. I'll admit that, but you slide in really quickly,
right,
and try to minimize the damage, and don't act like anything. You give I meant to do that look.
Yeah. I think I'm meaning more like an improvisatory way, when like just
Yeah.
playing.
I mean, I think people respond. There's a humanness to mistakes that people respond to. And I mean, I remember being part of a tribute to Danny Gatton when he died at the Bottom Line, right after he died. And there were 2 sets. And the first set I played through some weird amp and felt like I played terrible. And the second set I played through a JTM 45 with a 412 cabinet and thought, man, this is way more my thing. And like 2 or 3 people told me that it was great, but man, the first set was way better. You know, it really, I thought what you were doing in the first set was way better. And it's just like, it's like I think there's a subconscious thing that people pick up on when you're sort of in the struggle that we all struggle. I mean, life is a struggle, to quote some.
You just made that up.
Oh,
let's go with that.
Whatever. Life is suffering. So, I mean, I think people identify with when it's not easy, but yet you're not giving up, and you're sort of trying to dig out of that hole. And they're not literally thinking that, but subconsciously they're picking up on it. And so, to go back to what I originally started the whole day with, that scale. As you said, you and I are not thinking that much about scales, unless I'm playing with Robin and he throws one of his, 1,000 altered chord,
Right, yeah, then that's a different thing.
Blues things. Then I'm trying to figure out what do I play over that chord. God, I only had 1 coffee this morning. That is the problem.
I'm on 2.
Go back to the scale, and talk about chromatics. That if you land a half step away from the note you were intending to, it's an opportunity to create something new. And I can show you every wrong half step in A blues on the 1 chord. That the flat 5.
Yeah,
it's just an opportunity. The flat 6.
Yeah.
There's all. I mean, you can turn mistakes into something you've never played before.
And I practice that stuff on purpose too. I mean, at home, like just to be more, to get into the note, like trying to be more expressive with the note. But I found even just messing around trying to find that thing, like you said, kind of flat 5. It's just another approach to it. And then so if you're on the gig and you make a mistake, you just have the confidence of like, I got this covered,
Yeah.
So we're getting some gear questions, of course. So is that the same gold top you've been playing for years?
No, I've got about 3 or 4 gold tops. The evolution of all that was I got a gold top in '87 when I was with Ely, and then later with Mellencamp it was a PRS standard, which is a 24 fret guitar. And then I sort of helped develop the McCarty model, and I played that for years. And then this is my signature model that came out in '07, I think. And
the best PRS there is?
It's the PRS for people that don't like PRS, I think. And
that's why I like that guitar so much. No offense to PRS.
This is a 2010, and I'm pretty partial to this particular guitar. I have a good friend who had this guitar, and it's so weird. You pick up a guitar, and like immediately. Mm-hmm. It's like I picked up this guitar, and it was like, this is my child. And I didn't, like I said, would you trade me or would you sell me this guitar? Mm-hmm. He could tell, and after about a half an hour, he goes, I had a real fancy one, and he goes, I'll trade you if you want to trade. And it wasn't because he wanted a fancier guitar. He was just, he wanted me to have this guitar. So this is it's totally off the line.
Which is killer. That's just an off-the-rack guitar. That's great.
It's an off-the-rack guitar, and the sort of the goal with this guitar was to get something that sounded like my 59 335. or at least the pickups and the way it responded. And this guitar is interchangeable with that instrument. I mean, the 335 is obviously a semi-hollow guitar. It'll do things this one won't, but this will do a lot of things that one won't. But the sound of it, the inherent sound of the pickups, the frequency response, the output, the responsiveness, that this guitar will do almost everything.
There is.
I still have a bunch of great vintage stuff that I intersperse, and especially in sessions.
Yeah.
But so this guitar, I've been playing this one a lot lately, and again, I try to rotate them a little bit. But the more you play the guitar, the better it seems to settle in, and it becomes your guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through this thing, and we've talked about it, like looking for the guitar, like your guitar. I mean, I know you've got a lot of guitars, but there's certain, you find the few that you're like, these are my guitars. You know,
Right.
these are the ones that I'm going to go to each time, which is a really cool feeling. And what a cool story that kind of just showed up for you, that one, you know, like in a spiritual sort of
I know.
way that your friend had it. This thing too, I mean, obviously it's a vintage one, but it's just a magical guitar.
That thing.
I don't know why he let it go, but
It's hard to concentrate. I think I keep losing my train of thought because I'm looking at that guitar.
yeah, you know, I think, you know, I got it from Robin, and he has I think he had a moment when we were talking about it, he's like, yeah. Like, I liked that guitar a lot. And I'm like,
can I have it back?
Yeah, just kind of change the subject back to,
Yeah.
you know, no. Yeah, there's, you know, I mean, but yes, it doesn't have to be old or anything like that. One of my Tuttle Strat that I've had forever, just every time I pick it up, it's like old pair of jeans, and I'm completely happy with it. I've never been unhappy with the guitar. It just grabs me from the day I got it.
Well, the thing about old guitars is that they're not all great. But
true.
when you get a good one, there's something that's almost impossible to replicate in a new guitar. So for me to not play, I have a bunch of great old guitars. Mm-hmm. This is the only thing I've found that satisfies me to not, you know, enough to where I just end up choosing this guitar.
And that is awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So we have got the pick questions and strings, those kind of things. If you could just talk a little bit about that, the old nuts and bolts, you know.
I'm a Diodario guy all the way, and I have been forever. I mean, like since the Ely days, I use Diodario strings and picks. You know, it's a typical Fender Heavy 1 millimeter. On this particular guitar, I have 11 to 49 strings. On some of the PRSs, they seem to sound better with the 10.5 to 48, whatever. Mm-hmm. And on Fenders and some vintage Gibsons, I'll put 10s. When the frets are smaller, I got to have a little lighter gauge. But this guitar has, you know, substantial frets, and so I can get away with 11s. But you know, I kind of go by the sound, and each guitar is different. And some of these sound better with 10.5s. Even I've got one that has 10s on it. But in general, 11 to 49 on this. And on acoustics, on most of my vintage acoustics, I'll use mediums, 13s. It just drives the top more. Right. If I'm going to do an acoustic gig where I'm soloing, I'll put 12s on.
Mm-hmm. It is funny how certain guitars, like you're saying, like that the 10.5 versus an 11 or 10 makes a huge difference. It's just sometimes
it really does.
Yeah, and we talked about this, and I think a lot of people know it's guitar specific. It's bizarre that, you know, some guitar you're like 10s just feel too light and 11s are just too heavy, you know, and then at least Diodario, it makes totally consistent strings, which I love from them too. I think I've gotten like one bad string in 20 years, you know, so
I've never had a bad string.
I had one recently.
I've never had a bad string, and I mean, I put them on. They have a baritone set. They have a Nashville high string set, 12-string sets. You know, it's just everything. It's one-stop shopping there, and I've never had a bad set or a bad string. The only, I mean, in you know, in the old days when they came in the individual paper envelopes, if a set would sit around for 2 years, it's going to be kind of funky.
Yeah, sure.
Now with the way they pack them.
Yeah. I had one bad string, and you know, fortunately with experience, you know, because I was playing it, and like it was the guitar's intonation was out the window, and I had a bad D string, like the first time ever. You know, I was like, this is crazy after all that time. So now in terms of amps, you got some amps behind you. Well, what's your main go-to amp? People want to know, and you know.
The main, well, I mean, I'm playing right now. This is the PRS, my signature 30-watt head, and the cabinet's in the other room. I have no idea what it sounds like on Skype, but I use that amp for almost everything. And in the studio, it gets picked 95% of the time. So I also have a 2-Rock custom reverb signature that I think is a fabulous amp. You have one. So, as far as new amps go, I mean, I use the PRS most of the time, but the 2-Rock will do its own thing. And Eli at 2-Rock, I mean, if you look inside those amps, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
And the reverb is to die for. So those two amps, in terms of new amps, let me look. That's it in terms of new amps. And then this quarantine thing has given me the opportunity to turn on a lot. I have a nice collection of old amps, and I've sort of been rediscovering the joys of old Marshalls and Voxes.
You don't live in Brooklyn.
I live in Brooklyn, and I have a soundproof
My
room.
neighbors would not be really happy with me.
The other night, I was playing a 100-watt plexi at midnight,
God.
and you can't hear it outside.
Mine just sits there and looks cool, you know.
Yeah. It was on 10, but so I did a couple of videos recently with that amp, and it's a 67, maybe a 60, early 68, I don't know, PA head.
Lay down transformer?
Lay down transformer, and I pulled 2 of the tubes out and had it rebiased for that. So it's technically only putting out 50 watts, but it's got the bigger transformer, so it's somewhere in between a 50 and a full-blown 100.
Yeah.
And those amps are really pretty low gain, which I like. I don't like the overly gainy ones, and I just turned it all the way up. And then the guy that used to work on my amps before he passed away, Bill Ussery, sort of voiced in really subtle ways that it has 4 channels, and each channel is slightly different.
Oh, great.
The first channel is the full-on high treble channel, but it's not like shrill. So that the other day I cut an entire track with that plexi head, and I had just kind of rotated channels, and then I went to do an electric 12-string part. And the last thing you want with an electric 12-string is a lot of low end. And I just plugged into that channel, and it was sparkly and bright, kind of vox, like clean voxy.
Yeah.
So I've got that, and I have a 72 super bass that's still hand wired, which super basses are highly underrated. That you can still get a great, clean, rich, clean sound out of it.
I think they're some of my favorite clean sounds out of Marshalls.
They are. And
this is, I don't know if you can see, that's a super lead 72 that I have that my amp guy Matt Wells, who does like Jimmy Page's amps and all these people's amps, he kind of tweaked it so it's not the same thing. It's not as shrill, not as much gain. And it sounds like, I think he's saying it sounds like Clapton, just the bass channel on 10 with the Les Paul. It sounds like, Wheels of Fire. So it's pretty cool. And then before you get there, there's a nice clean tone when it's loud and full, and it's a lot of.
And people overlook that in Marshalls. I think a lot
for sure.
Because
they're not 800s, or not. They're not all like 800s.
They're not all JCM 800s. But the thing about a JCM 800, you can make it sound good if you plug into the low sensitivity input.
I love 800s. I'm just saying that there's it's a different amp entirely.
Yeah.
So someone has asked. Sorry.
Okay, I was just going to run. I'm looking in the other room, and I'm just going to run down real quick. I've got my 50 that I use with Ely and Mellencamp still, and I got a JTM 45. It's actually an incredibly rare head because it's the Beano. It's got tremolo, and it's
cool.
Got the white panel on the back, and apparently it's a very rare JTM 45. And then a 50-watt high watt and an AC30 and a Tweed Deluxe. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of bases get covered there.
Well, a lot of session work.
And I have one of those things that's sitting behind you called an aux box, which is a fantastic thing.
This might be aux.
Remarkable recording tool, especially if you're quiet. If you can't play loud. And the PRS 30 into that, I can get literally any sound. And some amps work better than others with it.
Yeah.
That amp in particular works really, really well.
The super lead into that is Works really, really well. Yeah. Someone's asking about your Jeder pedal. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah. You introduced me to Brad, and he sent me a couple of pedals to try out, and I really, really dug them because you can get. I liked where they were coming from to where I could get it to where it was more like a boost with as much gain as I wanted to sneak in. It wasn't all just like incredibly gainy, and you had to turn the gain knob down to 1 for me because my tone in general, like I just had a little delay on there, but this is what I don't know what it sounds like on Skype, but that's when I play hard. I've got my PRS. It's just about 5.5 and the master's on 10. So it's crunching when I hit it hard. And I usually add just a slight bit of slap. And then when I turn the guitar down, it's sort of my clean channel. It cleans up really nicely, or I can go so far as to go the single coil. Nice. So that Brad's pedals, they don't. It's not you can still retain the bottom end in the signal if you want. I've never been a big tube screamer guy.
Yeah, me neither.
And and a lot of people think I'm crazy. Like, what?
I can't get them to sound good for me.
I can't. They don't work for me.
Me neither.
They obviously work for tons of people.
Yep.
So I talked to Brad, and what we basically did was take a lot of what's inherent in his pedals, but sort of redo the gain structure a little bit, so I had even more flexibility with the amount of gain in the rate at which the gain came in. So I use it as sort of my middle pedal. Generally have an exotic EP booster first. No, last. But that's my first extra gain stage is the exotic EP booster.
Right.
In the vintage settings that you go inside and do the div switches and put them on the vintage position, which basically is the ever so slight treble roll off, because I don't when I'm soloing, I don't want it brighter. I don't want to introduce more top in. I'd rather have if I'm going to have a brighter signal when I turn down and I'm playing rhythm guitar under a singer, I want it to cut with less volume. So that I go into the EP booster and then I've got it backwards. That's my first level of gain, but it comes third in line. Right. I start out with a Sonic Audio Telos pedal, which it kind of gets into tube screamer land where it'll kind of trim off some of the That pedal also has a boost in it, which is really nice. I use that sometimes as well. So that's the first pedal, and it also has a great buffer. Yeah, which is really important for me to have a good buffer at the beginning and the end of the chain. So that's the most gain. That's first in line, and then the Jeder is in the middle of the two, and it is. I actually have, a fair amount of gain dialed in as the way it fits right now. I've been recording a bunch of stuff here for different people in my studio. But again, it doesn't have the mid hump on the disc. And I can turn it up a little bit.
Do it.
Well, I mean, it just,
I know,
so
yeah.
I'm not turning the gain up. I'm just hitting the front of the amp a little harder. And when you turn down, it cleans up.
Now we're going to hit with a demonetization. Yeah. Now, one thing I've noticed about that, when the clinics we've done together, and you've even done it at a low volume, you get a really great harmonic overtones at a low volume, even with that pedal. Which is super cool, and I think Brad makes, he makes good stuff.
It's my favorite overall, in terms of never having to run away from too much top end or trying to continually tweak knobs. His pedals, he hears things. I think
that you do.
We have similar ears. That's kind of like they're just sort of just easy. It's hard to get a bad sound. The same way with this amp. I really have a hard time. Like at a clinic once, I turned the volume down to the master volume down to 1, and then the channel volume all the way up, thinking like this is the sound I don't want. And I was like, wow, that sounds pretty good. I mean, it's like almost, it's hard to get a bad sound out of that amp.
Yeah.
So the gear that I like is in a way it's very organic and somewhat neutral in a way, in that it doesn't introduce this massive weirdness that I have to get away from, and it allows my hands to.
It's just like more of the amp.
It's more of the amp, and they all work together. And I joke all day long that this is the most important effect on your board is your hands. It's all about your hands, but at the same time, the right guitar, the right pedals, the right pedal board, things being, buffered and not too much true bypass and not too much buffers and good cables and a good amp. It really helps me. If I'm playing crap, it's hard to. It's not inspiring.
No.
But that can look in 1,000 different ways. I can take a cable and plug it straight into that amp, and I can play the way I play, or a Tweed Deluxe, and it's going to sound like me, and I'm going to be fine. Yeah. If I take a cable and plug it straight into a Silverface twin reverb, I can make it work, but it doesn't. I'm not going to get the harmonic thing and the. I mean, it's just not going to sound like that.
No.
That's no pedals. That's just the amp.
One thing that's really cool about this too is you're basically just playing through everything into the front of the amp. There's no effects loop going on. It's just one channel amp, and you make everything work from you. And I went through that whole period of effects loops and this and that. And oh my god, this is just too much of a pain in the butt. There's certain things for a long delay. Yes, I would like an effects loop for certain things. But what I've just come to do at this point is less gain from the amp, and then I just put the pedals and I work it all from pedals. And I think the amp is the platform, and you can get what you're getting out of it. And if you know how to work with it, and especially live and spending a lot of time with it, you work around all these things and realize like, oh, that's the best way to do it. I mean, if you're doing effects heavy things, then there's other ways you got to work this stuff. But if you're talking about this, and I like the idea of not having any cables from the back of the amp to the front of all this kind of nonsense, that all just makes everything sound like crap, or becomes a big distraction. Because if it doesn't work, I always end up just unplugging it and just going into the front, because that's just the way you got to do it,
Well, I've played on a lot of records. And except for when I first moved to Austin 30 years ago, and I got drug out to LA to do some sessions, and I worked with Mike Landau, and he had the full Bradshaw rig.
Who? Just kidding.
Mike Landau.
Just joking.
I was like,
I'm kidding.
And Denny Calcutta, I'm like, 20 years old, going, what in the hell am I doing here? He had the full Bradshaw rig, which he moved away from, and he's got such a wonderful organic sound. But that was like, when I saw that, I was like, holy cow, I'm such a Luddite. I had my pedals in a gym bag, on the floor. And but since I've really been doing sessions, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you the complete, honest truth. I've never seen another session guitar player use an effects loop.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what, half of the emails I get, almost half of them are gear related, and about 80% of those are, how do you deal with your delay in front of the amp? I can't make it work. I have to use an effects loop. Mm-hmm. And the solution is turn the mix knob down. You've got too much delay going into your amplifier. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I get what they're talking about, and it can be a real problem. But I mean, I just bought a way huge Superpuss.
Yeah.
Which I just love saying that. I bought a Superpuss. But the mix knob on it, I'm like, it's off or too much delay. And so there's like this area that's a like a millimeter.
That's always the problem with delays. Yeah.
It work because it's just too much delay in front of the amp. Yeah. So, you know, like if I have a setting like this, which is a lot of delay with modulation. I just have to be careful about how hard I hit the guitar.
Yeah.
And I'll use these maybe with a little bit of compression, and maybe I'll turn the guitar all the way up, but probably put it on single coil if I'm really trying to get a shimmery. So all I did was turn. I mean, I had it on single coil for the chords, but you didn't. I don't have to do that.
Right.
And then I turned the long delay off and turned the guitar all the way up, so it goes from the shimmery delay clean thing to, you know, by turning the guitar all the way up and playing a little harder.
No, it's cool. It sounds great. What it also does, too, when you don't know what's coming, amp-wise, you go to a gig, you have so much control on your floor of knowing, you know. I just put this in there, like one pedal, I've got Matt Schofield told me about this one, the Deep Blue. It doesn't have any modulation, which I know both you and I kind of a little bit like that, but it's got a really nice blend, like level. Yeah. So it works well into the front of the amp. Which is a big difference, because sometimes you're like, yes, no, fuck, you know, that little nudge in between. So there was just a quick question about this. This is the Glaser Bridge on here. Just a real people asking gear questions about this guitar. So yeah, this is the Joe Glaser Bridge in Nashville. So it, because the neck angle, you cannot put a regular stop tailpiece on this thing. And as you brought up an excellent point, just started getting nerding out on this thing, is you were saying, which I never really thought about until you brought it up, was since the neck angle is such, the P90 in the bridge sits really close.
Yeah.
And then you said that's a good point that it starts to scream more at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a quick question somebody had here, it was sorry, I'm just getting a name. The question was, let me do the shout out because it's a great question. Rick Yenser was asking, how do you support musicians right now? So the answer to that, even very specifically, is buy our stuff. Like if you pre-order David's CD or you buy his True Fire course, or, you know, download, you know, go to his website, the new Bandcamp stuff, the money we see directly. And that's the way you can really support musicians at this point. Because I've got this tip jar here. I share it with everyone who's on the show. Just things like that. I mean, we're out of work to a large extent, but we do have products that you can still buy, and those are really helpful. So that would be my first answer: is buy the CD. You know. That's
my thing. I mean, I go through Facebook every night, and literally every third person I come to is doing a live stream. my thing doesn't really, I mean, I've been putting up some acoustic tracks, like one a day. I was for a while. Every day I was putting up an acoustic performance.
Yeah.
But I don't play solos on acoustic guitar like I do electric. And so there's really no way for me to do my thing.
Right.
And so that's why I was really intent on getting this record out. Because I think it sort of captures the way I want to be heard. And that's, I've started the pre-order a week ago, and it's been, really gratifying that people have been very supportive. And that's what I tell everybody is that, so appreciative that donate, give me money, you get something for it. And, that's about all I've got, and I am doing sessions for people, which I love to do. And luckily for me, a lot of that's been coming in, and, here I get the best guitar sounds I get anywhere. Yeah. And so I'm able to provide, and, there's a lot of people, that don't think that you can get great players to play on your stuff, and you can. Just email me on my website. Yeah. And
same here. People like
whoever you want to play on your record, you might be surprised at how many people have home studios where they can play on your tracks for you now.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have the teaching, which has been, I've been teaching online forever, so it's been great. And even like this, doing this YouTube stuff has been cool. And this is like another way that I'm hoping to build up another sort of income and revenue stream to, like, just to teach and interview people and give information. And I think that things like this are really helpful to people as well. So on that note, I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. That's the goal short term. Since we started doing this, it's been crazy. The response has been great. So if you're watching, please subscribe to my channel and hit the likes and then the bell. I had a nice conversation with Rick Beato, who's a super great guy and really just told me everything, this is what you need to do. And there's these algorithms, it sounds kind of crazy, that help get the word out. And at some point, then YouTube starts kind of promoting you. And which is great because it's been a lifeline to a lot of musicians and a source of income in a new world of gigging being what it is. So there's these other things like having a successful YouTube channel is a source of making a living.
I'm a total failure. I just started my channel. I'm a total failure.
Oh, no. Well, look, it's a whole, it's been a weird thing. I've kind of find a route that in between the two, and I've helped Robin a lot with his, which is kind of funny. It's slightly ahead of the curve, So it's all, but I've had a lot of help from like Rick and Brett Papa, Papa Stash, and Corey Congilio has been really helpful. These guys who were more in tune with this stuff. And it's been cool, but that's another way you can help people like us. But I want to wrap it up pretty soon. We still got a lot. Wow, 185 people still watching. So everybody's been really enjoying the conversation, which is, so I've been kind of letting it roll. There's been some questions, but there are things some guitar related stuff that I feel like you really cover in your courses, like, can you talk about hybrid picking or some of your chord voicings, which you did earlier, but there are also a ton of them are available in all your TrueFire courses, which are extremely affordable and broken down with background tracks and everything like that,
Yeah, and the TrueFire courses, I really do break it down like in incredible detail. Yeah. Chord voicings, to me, because I've played in a lot of three-piece bands, and I do, I'm always trying to create, the chord voicings are really dictated by who you're playing with, who else is on the bandstand, what range they're playing in. But a lot of the stuff I've done over the years, I've been the only guitar player. And especially with Joe Ely, I kind of got this thing together where I was trying to create the biggest sound I could. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of a nut about tuning. Like, I drive people nuts with it, which I'm going to tune. I'm going to tune while I talk a little bit. And what I found is that the whole bar chord thing that has the third in it can sound really terrible on when you've got a slightly overdriven tone, even if you're perfectly in tune. With a clean tone, not so bad. But See right there, I mean, I hear that being grossly out of tune. Whereas that, with no third, just 1 and 5.
You were saying?
I was saying, yeah. So a lot of the chords that I use, if I'm going to use 6 strings, the only time I will ever use all 6 strings to play a chord is if I'm playing something that basically does not have a third. So these are all just different ways to repeat 1 and 5. E, B, E, B, B, E. Sometimes I'll do I'll do a lot of sus chords. So, so for E, my A is the same thing up here. And this voicing here, this kind of movable voicing, 1, 5, 1. With hybrid picking, there's so much that can happen just by lifting one finger and using your right hand. All I'm doing is lifting the third finger of my left hand. I'm not.
But these are those.
So if you listen, I mean, I'll see if I can dial this up here.
Those are real distinctively you things too, which is awesome.
Yeah, like this song here. Tell me if this is too loud. Scream at me.
All right. Good.
So that's, it sounds like when you look at it, it doesn't look like you're doing very much. But that's another thing about some of these voicings. So, and if I'm playing in G, I never play this chord. I never play that G, ever. The only time I'll even remotely get to that chord is if I'm in an open tuning or trying to create an open tuning sound. I'll mute that. I won't play that third, but I'll. As one of those, but if I'm just playing in G, it's when again I'm muting the A string, so it's G, D, G, D, G, 1 and 5 repeated. And then if I'm playing that chord going to C, it's usually going to either be or. Where did it go? This song. So that Mellencamp record, is just full of all those more rock voicing things that I do. And if I'm using thirds, a lot of, I'm just going to stick with A because we've been talking about A. A lot of times, if I want to play an A7, I'm going to play it like this. So my thumb is fretting the A here, muting the open A string. You could let it ring if you wanted in A, but in general, as a movable form, the thumb is muting the 5th string. There's your flat 7, there's your 3rd. To the 4th. So just different ways. If I'm going to use the 3rd, I'm not going to play all 6 strings.
Right.
In general, sure. Occasionally an E.
Yeah. Because it calls for that. That's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, that is what it is.
Yeah,
playing
exactly.
Like a 60s ROCK in the USA or Gloria or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thanks. Let's call it. We've been on for an hour and 45 minutes. So once again, people are asking, people want to know, will you have hard copy CDs available at some point and when they can get them?
Yeah, I'm going to have them, but here's the thing. CD Baby is not taking any new product right now, and they've like almost eliminated the retail thing, and that's what I've gone through in the past. So I can't get them to CD Baby. I'm going to try to get them to Waterloo Records here. Mm-hmm. Amazon will do disc on demand, where they print up a limited version. They print a CD and a limited version of the artwork, so you don't get any of the credits. And we don't make hardly anything on that, but it's better than nothing. I mean, right. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is hopefully get it into Waterloo Records. Hopefully CD Baby will open back up. Mm-hmm. And I may just sell them from our website and put on a mask and rubber gloves and go to the post office every day and ship them out.
Yeah, which is what I have to do too. And then
I don't know what else to do.
Careful with the international shipping. It's a pain.
I'm not shipping internationally. I can't.
It's such a pain in the butt. I mean, it fit all those forms and it cost a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, to send a CD was like $15. I was like, whoa! And then you have to fill out all the forms.
Yeah. So I just want to emphasize at Bandcamp, you can elect WAV files or FLAC files, and it's everything here. And then all the credits are listed there. And, it's obviously, I have huge boxes of these things that I picked up the other day and nowhere to sell them. So it's a bummer. But in the meantime, the download thing is really, at Bandcamp, is extremely artist friendly, and you get really high quality files.
It's great. So Phil, the great moderator here at Flamingan, he asked a question just on your F chord. Can you show him your F chord that you do, Dan? He's asked a few times, so he just want to make sure he gets that answered, and then we're going to call it a day.
That's a great question. So it's always the B string.
Always.
So F chords. I never, ever play that chord. I refuse to play that chord ever. So generally for me, an F, if I want the 3rd, it's going to be this way. Where the thumb frets the F, 3rd finger C, 4th finger the F again, and I'll do the add 9 or the F2, or use my 2nd finger to fret the A, the 3rd, the 1st finger to fret the C. But like when I do What Passes for Love, it's this F add 9 where you've got F, the A string muted, F with the 3rd finger, open G, 1st finger playing C, and 4th finger playing G. So you've got G twice in this F chord. And again, it also relates to the chords you're coming from. So I like to, do the voice leading, keeping the same note as somewhat of a drone. just change the strings. So to me, this is totally different than, just sounds completely different to me. So a lot of options for F, or, this is a nice F up here too. With the G string ring.
Oh, nice. Cool. All right, well, I want to wrap it up. So once again, thank you so much, David, for coming and doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Every Saturday morning, and people are like, you're not going to stop this once this whole thing is over. Probably not, hopefully not. Next weekend, next Saturday at 11 Eastern Standard Time, have Mark Leteri, which is freaking great because that guy is ridiculous and a great guy. And then the following week, I've got Joey Landreth, who I think is one of my favorite newer artists, if you want to. I mean, as a player and a singer. Didn't you hire him on a session to sing some stuff, didn't you?
What's that?
Didn't you get Joey to sing on some stuff on something?
He sang on the Rita Coolidge record that I played on, like 5-part like gospel choir himself. I mean, the guy, he's this, what a amazing guitar player, but also just a fabulous singer and songwriter.
Yeah.
And
a super nice guy.
Kind of the missing link sometimes is songs, and he's got it all going on. You got Mark and Joey.
Yeah, and then the following week I think is Scott Sherrard's coming on.
Nice.
And then Robin's going to come on, and Sonny Landreth said he was going to do it, and so it's all sorts of fun stuff. So I appreciate you doing it. So once again, ring the bell, like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We have the tip jar. Thank you so much to everybody who's donated. We both really appreciate it. And buy David's CD. All the links are there. Do the download, True Fire courses. I'm not like the salesman at this point, but just cram it all in. And then it's Open Road 25 for 25% off of any of David's True Fire courses. Mine, it's I got my code here as well, but we're pushing David right now. So every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I'm doing a live lesson as well. So Brooklyn Lockdown, thanks to everyone for making it such a success. I'm really humbled by it, and thank you so much. So anything else to say, David?
No, just thanks a lot for everyone showing up and for all your support. I really appreciate it.
Great. So I'll see you guys all later. Let me find this window so I'm not. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon. See you on Wednesday at 4 Eastern Time.